In this internet and technology-obsessed age, it's amazing what simpler pastimes survive. Dungeons and Dragons, the fantasy role-playing game, was huge in the 1980s and required little more than a pen and paper, a dice and a bit of imagination. Now it's undergoing something of a revival, as Alison Caldwell reports.
In living rooms around Australia, a game of strategy and boundless imagination is keeping its fans up late into the night.
I'm not really sure what's cool and what's not. I don't really keep in touch with pop culture, but I'd say it's pretty cool.
Long before Game of Thrones, Dungeons and Dragons lured players with the promise of legend and great adventure. "29-year-old Kim I-Nguyen is one of a legion of new fans of the role-playing game.
I was always like, ugh, nerds, ew, sounds terrible. But a couple of years ago, my partner roped me into it. He's like, oh, come on, Kim, you'd love it. It's a lot of fun. You talk shit and roll dice. 3. Freedom. The C is freedom, the freedom to go anywhere and do anything.
Tonight, Kim's party of adventurers is embarking on a whole new campaign. The last one played out for over a year.
I'm going to smite some sense into these scoundrels.
I'm playing an elven rogue. So being a rogue, she's really good with like bows and short swords. I just really love the conversation part, the actual role-playing.
Okay, so this is all taking place in a bit of like a clearing, so there's a big tree in the middle.
Michael is the dungeon master in Kim's game, the main storyteller and referee.
In the course of a game, I'm doing things like controlling the non-player characters, controlling the monsters, making decisions about, how things happen. In fact, you are just about to be turned into a lifeless husk when these people arrive.
Great.
Yep. So that's your situation. You do get to roll initiative, because you'll get to kind of make some checks to see if you can break out of the web before you are consumed.
22.
All right, one sec.
Dungeons and Dragons is the earliest role-playing game. It's been around since, I think, 1974. And a role-playing game is a game where you sit around and essentially tell a story together by playing the parts of characters and going through an adventure which is arbitrated by rules, which adds an element of risk and danger that you might fail.
Ben McKenzie is a game designer and a veteran D&D player.
It comes out of the same sort of origins of geek culture as the very early video games, guys in college who felt disenfranchised by the sort of traditional idea of masculinity, making an alternate way for them to, do these things that they wanted to do.
Yeah, dagger. Yeah, just make it a normal dagger. Isn't somebody a barbarian?
Gus.
Oh.
Dungeon Master Andy Hazel's group has been playing together for 7 years.
I didn't really have a TV when I was younger, so there was a lot more imagination and books going on. So when a neighbour showed me this, I took to it straight away, and then quickly converted a whole bunch of my friends at school and started writing adventures for them. He likes many things, but mace is his chosen weapon, yes.
Invented in the US in 1974, the board game's appeal waned in the late 80s with the advent of video games. Facing oblivion in the late 90s, a new owner revamped the game, releasing new editions and a mind-boggling 20-sided dice.
Oh, 2. Awesome.
So this is all from 1978, and it's all made by the original guy, Gary Gygax, who he wrote all these books and came up with them. He's like the god of some to many people.
Andy and his group are purists. They prefer an earlier vintage.
I can often write huge adventures and people will just turn the other direction and walk into the hills and I'll have to improvise stuff. So this is still much more about human contact and meeting up and having brown fizzy drinks and pizza and that sort of stuff. And
this is the most embarrassing day of my life. Oh, yes!
Fairfax columnist Clem Bastow has embraced Dungeons and Dragons.
My character today is called Zalgar, and he's a half-orc magic user from the realm of Pomage, and he's 6'5", and he's about 37. And I think his theme song would probably be Whitesnake's Here I Go Again.
Here I go again on my own.
He's kind of just been wandering around and somehow ended up in this cavern with all these people.
One reason for the revival in interest in D&D was the late 90s cult teen drama series Freaks and Geeks. Incorporated into its final episode, Freak Daniel, played by James Franco, is ordered to hang out with geeks and play D&D as punishment. To his surprise, Daniel enjoys it.
All right.
That's how Clem Bastow came to Dungeons & Dragons.
D&D in Freaks and Geeks is such a big part of those narratives. So when I found these books at the op shop, I just put the word out to people I thought might be interested, and it turned out everybody in the email chain was interested.
Once the domain of men only, today around 10% of D&D players are women.
Sometimes women just assume there's not something there for them, but I mean, we usually have a fairly even gender split. And what's really interesting too is, you know, people don't always play their own gender. So right now we've got one woman in the campaign, but 3 women at the table.
I'm a feminist, so I'm all about embracing, you know, everything. It's becoming a fairly new thing for women to get involved in D&D. For once I start drinking, it's hard for me to stop. Well, there we have it. I think we're also caught up in the internet world. In the end, you try and look for something a little bit different, something creative. It's kind of like a massive choose your own adventure story, but there is no end to the story, and that's really cool.
You would be surprised how many Dungeons and Dragons fans in the 7:30 office have outed themselves since we commissioned that story, or perhaps not.